Hey guys, what's going on? I hope you guys have been doing great out there. Today I've got for you my personal PC case, and that's the Thor Zone Mjolnir. First of all, I do want to apologize for not putting this video up sooner. Life has been just insane as usual. But on the plus side, I have spent a month with my new PC, and I can say that I've gotten pretty good time with it. So here's my current setup at the moment. The processor is a AMD Ryzen 5800. The GPU I'm using is the NVIDIA RTX 3070 Founders Edition. The RAM I'm running is a Corsair Dominator Platinum 32GB. For cooling, I'm running an AIO. It's the Corsair iQ H60i RGB Pro XT. Motherboard is an Asus Republic of Gamers Strix X570i. For power supply, I'm running the Corsair small form factor, the SF750. My hard drive is an M.2 SN750 by WD, and it's a terabyte. In terms of cable management, really, all I could do at this point is stuff cables wherever they could go. A lot of them, again, are routed on the GPU side because there's more space there. I definitely am looking to get custom cables to clean that up a little bit and see what I could do on that side. So going over the basic specs, this is a mini-itx small form factor case. Sitting on my desk with the rubber feet, it's about 21.4 centimeters tall by 13.2 centimeters wide and 35 centimeters long. The case is a typical sandwich style layout, so you've got the CPU, motherboard, RAM on one side along with the PSU. On the other side is the space allocated for your GPU. Now I'm running the 3070 FE. I hope to finally get a 3080 sometime when they may become available. Going into the price, now hope y'all are sitting down, but for this one I did fund this through part of the original Kickstarter campaign. I did pay $400 for this, and this came with the base case, the Godrays, which are the RGB lighting strips, and a set of glass panels. I also paid an additional $50 for the booster cell. But as part of the Kickstarter campaign, we did hit a few stretch goals to include an extra O2 panel, as well as a really cool Shield of Founders glass panel. So regarding the availability of this case, you do have to purchase this case during specific drop periods that are announced by the company. As an original Kickstarter, we did wait quite a long time for this case. It was maybe about a year and a half to 2 years for the case. That being said, I think it was a lot of the initial logistics of setting up, the company, setting up the manufacturing, and then setting up the shipping. I do know that there were several that were anxiously, to say the least, awaiting their cases. But for those of you that are going to order it going forward, I don't think this will be an issue now, as they're already going to have their contracts and shipping methods and manufacturing methods in place by the time that future orders come in. So going into the features of this case, one aspect that I'll note, and I guess I'll call it a feature, is its small form factor. I primarily got the case to kind of heighten the aesthetic of my desk, clear some space, get rid of some clutter, and just have a more clean desk setup in general. This case definitely hit that on a high mark for me. Another added benefit to the size of this case is the travel aspect of it. You can definitely take it with you if you plan on traveling. I actually did just that. I took it with myself to travel, and it was pretty nice to bring along. Another huge feature of this case, which I really love, is the slide in, slide out chassis of this design. You can basically build all your components into the chassis, eliminating the need for kind of twisting wires and getting around a lot of corners. You kind of build this as an open test bench almost, and when you're done with the build, you get all the wires and components tucked in. You slide the chassis right into the shell of the case. A really awesome feature of the sliding in chassis is that you can display whatever side of the case you want. You can display the CPU side or flip it right over and display the GPU side. On the chassis itself, you do get a nice 3.0 PCI riser cable already pre-installed, and you've also got a bracket up front for a 2.5-inch solid state drive. I just want to make a note, you can't use that solid state drive mount when you do have the booster cell on. There's room for 2 case fans on the top rail if you're running an air-cooled setup, or room for 1 radiator with a fan and 1 case fan on the top rail if you're running a water-cooled setup. The chassis has room for a 2-slot graphics card, but definitely check the website for the dimensions that are allowed in the case. The next feature of this case are the swappable panels. All four sides, including the top and the bottom, do have magnetically fixed panels. The magnets do hold pretty well, but the cool part about it, especially with the side panels, is that you can swap from vented to glass. You can see I've got the glass shown here. And you can also swap the top panels with that extra O2 panel if you want to do that. The case does have one power button here on the back, and if you do order the booster cell, you get another power button on the front, so you can basically map those buttons however you want. The Mjolnir has a really nice locking mechanism in the back. You just turn it kind of like a key, and it's very smooth and it works great. It's very secure once everything's in there and locked up. Overall, it's a pretty neat, compact design with no fuss and beautiful aesthetics, and it definitely hits my marks, at least with the feature side of it. So I'll go into the add-on features of the case. Again, these are things that you would basically have an upcharge for. The first one are the Godrays, or basically the configurable RGB strips. Regarding the Godrays, I do have to make one huge public service announcement, and this was kind of my own fault. The instructions clearly say to plug these into a 5V as you do with any addressable RGB, but in my excitement I did plug these into the 12V, so I basically fried one of my rails, and I'm really heartbroken over that. If I could make a suggestion to Thor Zone, if you could include one little piece of paper in the box of the Godrays, just as a warning and a reminder to plug these into the 5V rather than the 12V, I think that would help a lot of people remember that when they're building the case. The other add-on that I got was the booster cell. Now you get quite a lot of features, I think, for $50 with the booster cell. The booster cell allows you to put one more 120mm fan at the front of the case, and I've got a Noctua mounted here on mine. It's also got its own rails of RGB LED lighting built into it, so you're going to get lighting on the front of the case. It looks beautiful. And lastly, you get another power button added to the front of the case. Now another, I guess what I would call feature of this case is the build quality and overall presentation of the case. Right off the bat, right when I open it up, you can definitely tell it's premium construction. I really love that this case has really thick sidewalls, really thick metal. There's no flex, no bending, no creaks when you pick it up. It's basically one solid piece of kit when you pick it up and move it around, or when you're adjusting components inside it. The case comes in 3 color finishes, and that's the steel, the dark, and the stealth. For me, I went with the stealth, which is the black finish. The black finish, at least on mine, is executed perfectly. The panels match the frame very nicely, perfectly in my opinion. It's got a nice matte texture, but not a rough matte. It's definitely a very finished, smooth, matte texture to it. It's just, I couldn't praise it more. In terms of wear over time, I'd imagine the steel would fare the best, as it doesn't have a color coating applied to it. With my particular stealth model, now I've had this case for about a month, and because I was shooting this review, I've definitely taken this thing apart 20 or more times at least. Some of it has definitely been due to me putting components that probably didn't fit too well into the frame, so that resulted in some chassis rubbing on the frame. So I think I could report pretty well on how that frame is held up. You can see a couple small marks in the finish where the black is rubbed off. I think the corner guards really help it to avoid a skid marks along the whole length of the chassis. So really, I've got some minimal marks here, nothing too bad at all. The back of the frame does have a couple of scratches along the edge, basically at that final push from inserting the chassis into the frame. But with these, once you've got everything buttoned up, you don't see any of these scratches on the outside of the case. So again, these are only things you're going to see inside when you have the chassis opened up. The final product, when you have everything built in, the finish is held up perfectly and it still looks brand new. So the button, or the power buttons if you get the booster cell, are executed really well. They're flush with the face that they're mounted to. They have a really nice tactile click to it, a really satisfying feel when you turn on and off the PC. Another thing I like, and this is more regarding presentation, there's no branding anywhere on the case. Now I did mention that stretch goal to get a cool Shield of Founders logo on the glass panel, so if you want that, which actually I do like to rock, you can put that on, but otherwise, if you don't want any branding on your case, that's what you get with the Mjolnir. So I do want to cover some negatives of the case. I did mention and praise the fit and finish and quality of the case, but a couple of the smaller details. such as the magnets. The magnets, you can see a little bit of glue residue around them, and I know that's kind of like an initial kind of manufacturing type of deal. The magnets work really well. When you put the panels on, they'll cover them up completely, so really it's a non-issue for me. So another issue I do want to point out is the corner guards. When you're building the chassis and you slide the chassis in and out of the case, they do have corner guards to protect that chassis from scratching the metal of the case. Basically, those corner guards are going to fall off. So, I think that's kind of a learning, kind of a lessons learned kind of thing for Thor Zone, and I'm sure they'll work it out in the future. The good thing for us backers and for the buyers is that you can fix it really easily with some super glue. You can pop those corners back on, and they've worked like a charm for me, and I've taken this thing apart easily more than 20 times now. So another reoccurring issue with me, and I think a couple of others have had it too, my bottom panel does fall off every once in a while, mostly when I'm picking it up. I do notice that when putting the build together, the power button on the power cord on the PSU tends to stick out a little bit lower than it's probably designed to. I've actually kind of worked around it a little bit by flexing the chassis a little bit to have the power cable sit up, and that kind of leads me to my overall, maybe overall next negative of the case. I get what Thor Zone was trying to do by designing the case to very tight clearance specifications, but it almost doesn't factor in too much about what us as users are going to be building in it. We're going to have a variety of ideas, a variety of components that we're going to want to cram into this thing. And I feel like if each side were maybe expanded or given 1 more millimeter or 2 more millimeters around each side, we would have had much more space to work with. I'll point out some specific examples. If you have one of those higher profile RAM units like this Corsair Dominator that I have, you'll notice when sliding the chassis in and out, they have a tendency to kind of scratch on the outer wall of the case because they're so tight. One thing I do definitely want to mention is that this is my 3rd water cooler in this case. I have had an older H60, the Gen 2, that I would say doesn't fit in this case. I made it fit in this case, but because of things like harder tubing and a shorter tubing lengths, it really wasn't working on this case. I tried another AIO cooler, which was the EK 120mm cooler, and that actually did not clear the case at all. The cooler was too tall to fit within the glass panels. I did cram it in there and kind of force it in there, but I found that you couldn't mount the glass panel on, and you also couldn't slide it out. If you do find yourself building an air-cooled setup like a slim Noctua profile CPU cooler, you're gonna find this build is gonna be pretty easy. You're gonna find a lot of space in the case, a lot of airflow in there. If you do step up to an AIO, or dare I say a custom loop, it does get a lot trickier from there. For example, with the AIOs, I found that even though you're supposed to basically fit a 120mm AIO, you're gonna have to really consider each component, such as the tubing. Is it rigid tubing? Is it more flexible tubing? The length of the tubing? The CPU block itself, you're gonna have to consider the height of that CPU block because this case does have pretty narrow dimensions. So I think part of the newness of the case is having to figure out what components are gonna fit with these really tight dimensions, and the community over time is gonna have to determine that. With that being said, let's go ahead and turn it over to the thermals, and I found this pretty interesting. So going into the thermals, I basically did 2 means of stress testing on it, and that was through a typical Timespy stress test and the Unigen Heaven stress test. I also did this with a variety of configurations of side panels. I've tried it with and without the booster cell, as well as an air-cooled setup using the Noctua NH-L9A, and an AIO cooler in the Corsair H60i RGB Pro XT. Keep in mind, I am running the Ryzen 5800X. Now this is definitely a CPU that's known to run hot to begin with. It's really the only one I could get my hands on at that moment, so this is what I've got. Starting off with Timespy, obviously you're going to see a big jump going from the water-cooled, which is the blue, to the air-cooled, which is the red. The biggest difference from running with no panels to both glass panels is pretty minimal on the CPU side on water cooling. I've only saw about a 3-degree difference. Going to the air-cooled setup on the Noctua, the no panels compared to both glass panels on, it's about a 7-degree difference. With the water cooling, you're running from the high 40s to low 50s, and a big jump again from the air cooling, you're running about as high as 77 if you have both glass panels. If you're on an air-cooled setup, it seems that going from all vented panels to maybe a glass panel and a vented panel mix, you do see a pretty significant drop, about 7 degrees there. But that difference is not really noticeable when you're on a water-cooled setup. So in my case, having run a water cool, I'm running a glass setup on the CPU side and a vented setup on the other side, as both vented panels with the water cooling setup didn't make that much difference to me. Now, testing with the booster cell, and I believe Thor Zone themselves have said this, maybe in various forms, but the booster cell is not really going to help or make that much difference, at least with the CPU temperatures. I think the booster cell is there to help with your case thermals in general, and take this with a grain of salt, but I do notice that the fans seem to be running not as loud the majority of the time when I am running the booster cell, and definitely the PSU fan is definitely not running nearly as much when I have the booster cell as when I have it off. So if you're looking to buy the booster cell specifically for a decrease in CPU, and I'd even say GPU thermals, I don't think it would be worth it for that case, because I don't think you're going to see very big benefits from using the booster cell. Again, the benefits I think you're going to see is a better case thermal overall. Going into the GPU side, you do find an interesting correlation between the air and liquid CPU coolers. While you would expect a liquid CPU cooler to provide a great benefit in the cooling of the CPU, with all of the added components you're introducing, like the radiator, the extra cables, especially if you're going with a Corsair, it results in a little bit of an increase in the GPU thermals, and that's obviously due to the case not having that room to breathe and space for air circulation. Overall though, going with the AIO setup is definitely the way to go, because you do see a really great reduction in the CPU temperature and only a little bit of an increase for the GPU side of things. Again, I am running the 3070 Founders Edition, and you do see a lot of criticism about hot air blowing from the GPU to the CPU, especially in a sandwich style case. At least with my setup, it doesn't look like the CPU is going to internally combust or explode at this point, so really I'm just fine with having the Founders Edition card within the Mjolnir. Here are my results on Unigine Heaven, and you can see they're fairly on par with what I found with the Timespy. And switching to GPU thermals on Unigine Heaven, you kind of see the same thing again, where the GPU is getting a little bit of a higher temperature due to using an AIO versus the air cooler. I'm pretty much using this PC as a typical personal gaming rig, and for me, after a couple hours of playing, the thermals seem to hold true to what we're seeing here on the stress tests. That being said, my closing thoughts: who do I think this is for? Is it going to work for me? Am I going to keep this case? Well, first of all, I'll say my point of view is basically I'm not a pro like a lot of you guys. I'm not gonna, overclock or underclock or undervolt, any of my components. I'm typically gonna be the guy that's gonna buy the components, have fun building a case, and just run it as it is. That's typically how I gravitate. That being said, I do really value a high quality component, whether it be a case or a stick of RAM, whatever it may be. I'm fine, and I actually expect components to run at the thermal temperatures that they're rated to run, so I'm not gonna be too bothered if something's running a little bit on the hotter end, as long as it's within its tolerance. And another view of where I'm coming from is I want to be able to reasonably put together the PC, again, build it and just be able to run it without having to make any tweaks or mods or adjustments just to make components work. I definitely appreciate when you can put something together and, you flip the power button on and you're up and running. So for me, did this fit the bill? I will say that I did have quite an experience swapping out the AIOs a couple times, so that is a little bit of a learning curve and lesson learned for me. So really, not just specific to this case, but with any small form factor case, you're going to have to acknowledge that you're going to make some sacrifices in the build experience, the tolerances, the thermals in the case. So if you come at it with that expectation managed, I think this case definitely fits the bill for a small form factor case that's great quality, a great looker, and something solid that you're going to enjoy for years to come. Really, at the end of the day, if you do get this is going to look really great in your desk, really great in your office. It's a beautiful piece of machining, and it is well executed. For me, all in all, this is going to be my personal case because I actually love it. I love how it looks, I love how it came out in the end, I love the quality, I love the product. I think Thor Zone did a really great job on their first run at a mass-produced case, and I hope they keep on going strong. I really love this thing, and I'm looking forward to many years with it. As always, I'm going to leave you guys with the angles and the views of this beautiful PC case. Thank you guys for watching. If you did like it, if it was useful, I hope you do subscribe. I got a lot more coming on your way. I really appreciate you guys. Hope you're having a great summer. Take it easy, and I'll see y'all on the next one. See you later.